Whether determinism is true is indeterminate, and who believes in it seems to be random. Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Dave. Today's topic is non-determinism, more precise, why non-determinism makes more sense. I hope determinism isn't the foundation for your core belief, because today I'm about to give you my best arguments why the universe most probably isn't determined. Let's cut straight to the case. I want to establish that the perspective determinism as a view on how the universe works is a belief. It's not a proven fact, and for many it might even be a dogma. I will get to definition and what the facts are in a moment. There is in my mind three emerging intuitive thoughts that I think most people have. First, events have causes. Second, some events happen at random. And third, conscious beings, we, have free will. These three intuitive thoughts seem to be in conflict with each other. But I consider the compatibilist standpoint, the idea that free will and determinism can simultaneously be true, as somewhat bullshit. Instead of relating to the issue being discussed, they avoid the whole problem by jumping from one category to another, to preserve the two conflicting views. The sleight of hand is not really stating that they are both true, but to portray it as if they belong to the same category. To explain, determinism is the idea that every event, absolutely all, is caused by previous events in a causal chain. Wikipedia states it like this. Determinism is a philosophical view where all events are determined completely by previously existing causes. The universe is physical, and we are of course talking about physical events and physical causes. When we are talking about determinism. In this perspective, the brain, where the potential for free will is located, is a physical structure in the physical reality. Here, input throughout the life is going in, and it is resulting in actions in the physical reality. In this context, free will must be something that is located outside of physical reality. That something manifests as glitches in the physical structure of the brain. And even this might just be moving the goalpost out of reach of rational thought. Still, I think free will is a useful concept. I don't feel it's necessary to differentiate between concepts like will, free will, and libertarian free will, other than as ways to distinguish different interpretation of the same observed phenomena. I just call it free will. Whether it's really free in a physical sense or if it's what I like to refer to as a rainbow. By rainbow I mean something that seems to be a physical thing, but are in actuality some kind of illusion. The dichotomy we are talking about is between determined and random. These are the two alternatives in the physical reality. I do believe in a causal chain, though. This perspective is referred to as a causal determinism. This is what Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy says about causal determinism. Causal determinism is, roughly speaking, the idea that every event is necessitated by antecedent events and conditions together with the laws of nature. So I distinguish between determinism and the belief in a causal chain, in that determinism is a belief that the whole of the universe is in its completeness determined. while causal determinism is for me the perspective that each event individually is caused by antecedent events. I make this distinction because I think it's necessary to have both ideas represented with different words in my worldview. There are conditions where causal determinisms don't necessitate determinism. For the universe to be fully determined, one must believe that the causal chain is complete. For me, it's clear that for this to be true, it indicates that there must have been a hard start of the universe. Not only that, but even at the start, the whole event cycle, everything that will happen in the future, must have been predetermined. And there must have been a start. In his 1997 book, The End of Certainty, Prigogine contends that determinism is no longer a viable scientific belief. This is a quote from the Wikipedia article about indeterminism. Ilya Prigogine was talking about irreversibility and instability. Also in quantum physics, indeterminacy seems to have become the prevalent perspective. I am quite far from being qualified to talk about quantum physics, but I urge you to go read about it for yourself. I have always struggled to grasp the idea that the universe had a hard start, like that there was nothing before the Big Bang. It seems to me much more intuitive that it must have been going on forever. I am also here left to trust the experts. I am not at all qualified to make up my own ideas of how it all started. If, let's say, a child asked me that question, how did the universe start, I would answer what seems to be the case and what best explains the observed phenomena is that it started with the Big Bang. But you must bear in mind that when one says that time and space started at the Big Bang, one is referring to our time and our space. Of course, we don't know about any other time and space than ours, but even a sample of one proves the possibility. And if the possibility is there, let's say you walk in the mountains and you find a valuable gemstone at a certain location. Would you think, that's so rare it would never happen again, and walk on? Or would you, like me, think, since I found one here, there might also be another lying around? The same is true with life on other planets. Think about the vastness of space. I think it's absurd to think that we are the only ones, even though we are the only ones we know about for now. But even if the Big Bang was a hard start of the universe, starting with a singularity, it seems to me to be strange if that singularity contained within it the potential for only one causal chain leading to the present. It's kind of intuitively feels like those two things don't belong together, singularity and predestination. That's just what I think about it. Anyway, if any infinities are true, determinism is false. The reasoning here is that if the number of causes in the causal chain for one event is infinite, the only rational way to interpret that is that the event in its final analysis is random. There is several candidate infinities to choose from. First is time and space. One could think of these as separate, but for simplicity I just count them together for now. If time and/or space is infinite, then the causal chain for events happening now are also infinite. The second candidate, infinity, is how small things can be. This touches into quantum indeterminism, I will say. But if there actually is a rock bottom for how small things can get, this alternative is defeated. But if we haven't found the bottom, there is no reason for us to assume that there is one. Remember that Planck unit is definitional. What I see as definitional truths is a subject for at least one further video. But for the science nerd out there that is ready to protest, I will mention that there are things indicating that there is a world smaller than what we are capable of relating to with today's technology. For example, imaginary particles popping in and out of existence in a quantum field. Remember, these are waves. The third candidate infinity is detail level. This one demands some explanation. This is different from the idea of infinitely small things, since it also can count for large things. I will use the moon as example. The moon orbits around the Earth can be divided into 360 degrees. Each degree can be divided into minutes, and then one can continue to divide. The question is, can we continue to divide forever? What I mean is there infinitely many positions for the moon to be in its orbit around the Earth? I think so. The ones of you who are clever will probably have recognized that this is like Zeno's arrow paradox. If you have not figured out the solution to this not paradox, here is the solution. I will give you a moment to brace yourself in case I am about to crush your illusions of magic in the world. The arrow isn't moving. Now, is that not what you expected? Well, the explanation is like this. Nothing is really moving in itself. This is counter to how we intuitively perceive the world around us. But the paradox of the arrow is in actuality evidence that our perception in this case is wrong. What is going on is that the relative position of the arrow in relation to the surroundings is changing. And this is what we perceive as movement. We think of it as one thing moving while the others is standing still. But try to think of it like this. Imagine you were a conscient microorganism coming into existence on the arrow right after it was shot from the bow. Now, from your perspective on the arrow, it would seem like you are sitting still while the earth is moving past underneath you. The same way that intuitively it seems like the sun and the stars are moving over the sky over us. I won't go further into it, but this is a logical conclusion following from the theory of relativity. That is not Einstein's theory of general relativity, just a theory that everything is relative. This, of course, also counts for Zeno's arrow. But from this it seems to follow that also the arrow, in its flight, can have infinitely many relative positions in relations to the Earth. I see no problem with this. What do you think? The fourth candidate, infinity, that I will mention is what I like to call accumulated chaos. I have to say I'm a bit unsure of this one. I'm not an expert mathematician, but let's see what you think. You guys have probably heard about the butterfly effect. If you haven't, you should go and read about it. It's about how weather in weather models will over a relatively short time change even due to an as small change in the indata to the model as the energy released by a butterfly flapping its wings. I think it was significantly changes in weather patterns over something like a couple of weeks. As I said, go and read about it for yourself. Anyway, imagine an event like a ship sinking in a storm. That storm could have changed its path due to a butterfly flapping its wings some weeks earlier. But not just that, going back a couple of years, one must consider all flaps of all butterflies and other insects in existence. Some will have one effect on the storm and some another. Actually, one must account for all flaps of all wings that have existed since insects took flight some 350 to 400 million years ago. And still, we are not at accumulated chaos yet. We are not talking just about an awfully lot of events influencing each other here. Let me set up some premises. Premise 1 is that a butterfly flapping its wings one time can change weather patterns, let's say 2 weeks in the future. Premise 2 is that within 3 years all flaps of all butterflies that exists influences all weather events all over the world. Premise 3 is that weather also influences butterflies. Premise 4, butterflies influences each other. Premise 5, weather influences future weather. And at last, premise 6, all influences in this setup can both inhibit or promote future flaps or weather, and influences its future flaps or weather is inhibiting or promoting all future flaps and weather until the final event that we are analyzing. In this case, whether the storm will hit that ship and sinking it. As you see, we are not just talking about a causal chain, but a causal web, where each link in the web influences each future event in the web in several ways, promoting or inhibiting and determining whether each other event has promoting or inhibiting effect in the future. Maybe we're not at infinity yet. I don't really know, but at least my brain has melted at this stage. But now imagine that we must account in the web not just for butterflies, but for all events, even on a quantum scale, all the way back to the Big Bang. This must at least go towards infinity. And if combined with one or more of the other infinities, it also means that we don't have to go back infinitely in time, for instance, to come to infinite causes. If time is infinite, the causes here and now are infinite. So let me recap what I have said. I base my belief that the universe is most likely non-determined on the idea that at least one of the following premises is true. The singularity from which the Big Bang started to inflate can't contain potential for predestination. If the number of causes for an event in a causal chain is infinite, this must be understood as that the event in the last analysis is random, and at least one of the following infinites are true. Time and/or space is infinite. B. Things can be infinitely small. C. Detail level is infinitely nuanced. D. Accumulated chaos leads to infinite causes. Even though I believe that the universe is non-determined in its final analysis, I do believe in a causal chain. So I like to call myself a soft determinist. Maybe that's wrong. How do you think about it? If I say I'm a non-determinist, I will have to explain myself every time. Anyway, I think the idea of determinism is important. The idea that events we observe, large or small, can be investigated and that we can find causes. It's even exciting. Instead of raising our shoulders and say, oh, well, that's just probably some random shit. The idea of determinism is in a way necessary both for science and curiosity. Still, we must accept that sometimes we just don't know why things happened. And some things might actually be impossible to predict. All things that we can't or couldn't predict must be considered to be random. I think that this also should be a law of science. If one don't know, and especially if one can't know, then that's what one should report. This does not mean that one shouldn't investigate. I think that probably chaos theory is the greatest step forward in the philosophy of science since determinism. as it has turbocharged research into probabilities and given us a language to talk about unstable systems, and so on. Free will. When it comes to the case of the brain, I wonder if the reasons why the idea of free will is so intuitively strong is due to the sheer complexity of the brain. The human brain is definitely a structure that falls into the category of unpredictable, at least for now. And maybe it can't be predicted if some of the infinities that I have mentioned is true. Exemplary if detail level is infinitely nuanced. There might also be some quantum indeterminacy going on in there. Anyway, when we talk about the unpredictability of the people's actions and decisions, we call it free will. And I don't see any reasons to change that. A funny thing is that when inanimate things like electronics do unpredictable things, it feels kind of like they are taking on a will of their own. I remember one time, one of my first mobile phones, I lost it in the toilet. After drying it carefully for days, I turned it back on and it seemed to work. But then strange things started to happen. It sent and received text messages containing incoherent letters from and to people on my phone list, all on its own. When I got a text message from my own house phone, which didn't have a text function, I realized that it had not just got a will of its own, but that it also had gone mad. Something similar happened to my CD player once. I had one with a carousel of 5 CDs. The player skipped to a random song on the next CD, and sometimes it turned on and started playing from a random CD at a random song, even in the middle of the night. I wonder if it was bored and couldn't sleep. It seems like it's our indeterminability that makes us associate to free will. I think that this also is the reason why people in the past have attributed things like the weather and celestial bodies with a free will and personalities. As soon as we had an explanations to why, exemplary, the wandering stars, the planets, move like they do on the night sky, there was no longer room for attributing them with a will of their own. I think also that things acting with free will is something that we are primed to look for in nature, like pareidolia. It's the same phenomena as seeing figures in the clouds or Jesus on toast. And interestingly, my dog do it too. Whenever she sees something moving erratic or unpredictable, her curiosity and fight-flight responses triggers at the same time. She wants to investigate, but she is also ready to retreat. It can even be something mundane like a plastic bag stuck in a bush, moving in the wind. One time, when she was a puppy, I bumped my raincoat hanging on the wall with my elbow, so it started to swing. I was getting dressed to go for a walk with her. From her viewpoint, she couldn't see what caused the swinging of the raincoat, so she was staring at the raincoat like if she had seen a ghost. When I bumped it again, the same way, she was ready to flee. Then I took one step away from the coat and moved it with my hand. Now she immediately calmed down and stopped focusing on the coat. To me, this shows two things. First is that she is comfortable with me, with the thought that I and other humans and animals have a will of her own, but she is not comfortable with the thought that the raincoat has one. Or maybe she suspected that there was something hidden inside the raincoat that could potentially be dangerous. Anyhow, she is obviously dividing between things that has a will and things that don't. And she is naturally looking for and is curious about things that has a will. The same way as humans is. This also seems to influence her expectations about what's going on in the world. This should mean that the pareidolia effect of looking for free will in nature must have evolved in animals long before humans. By the way, if you know about research done on pareidolia in animals, please let me know in the commentary field below. Now I want to revisit the 3 intuitions that I mentioned in the start of this video. Events has causes, some events happen at random, conscious beings, we, have free will. Maybe all 3 are true after all. Note that the 2 first belong to the physical world, while free will, the 3rd intuition, is a concept describing a system that is too complex for us to understand. So it's not compatibilism. Determinism and random and free will are ideas belonging in different categories. What do you guys think about it? Is the universe determined or random? Do you believe in compatibilism? How do you justify that? And have I misunderstood the position? Do we have free will in a physical sense? And in that case, where is it? Please write about it in the commentary field below. So in my worldview, there is room for a causal chain, randomness, and the concept of free will. But if I were pressed to choose one principle that I think is governing the universe, I would have to choose random. And then consequently, every event in its final analysis is random. Also, I would have to say that in this scenario, free will is nothing other than an illusion. But that is also true if the universe is determined. And then again, even in the case the universe is determined, we must treat events that we can't predict as if they are random. It is important to note that we must treat will as if it is free, both in if the universe is determined and if it is random. All my videos are opinionated. This one will be listed in a playlist called Building My Worldview. I love to be right, and that is the reason why I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. This counts for all my videos. Please write a comment below or contact me with some of the contact information I provide in the description below. Especially I hope to hear from you, as I said, if you think I have said something that is factually wrong. Wikipedia should be sufficient sources for most of what I am saying. If you struggle to find sources for anything, please notify me in the commentary section and I will get straight to work providing it. Thank you for the view and have a nice day.